Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the almost famous side show known as KOR, After Hours Bigfoot Geography, where we like to discuss the phenomenon known as Bigfoot in all the places around the world that he happens to show up at. I'm your host, Jaster and coming with me tonight is my co-host extraordinaire, Kazari Iwakura. How are you doing today, bud?
Hello, everybody. I've actually got my mic properly turned around toward me this time, so I don't sound weirdly far away.
I'm gonna laugh because it's gonna be like something I feel like we're only gonna notice in like retrospect.
There's
You know
gonna be
what I
some
mean?
kind of goof for sure, but that's part of the process of getting a new mic is ironing those issues out. So we're coming
Right.
off the heels of our subscriber special where we talked about the Cass River Bigfoot. Probably one of my favorite episodes we've done so far. I really like that we're starting to integrate more media into our episodes, such as footage, maps, and that's all that sort of stuff. So easy listening, easy viewing, and that's our philosophy over here at Core Live. So today we are up in Canada for a subject we've actually spoken on before. We briefly touched upon it in our Bigfoot iceberg last year when we talked about forest giants and how significant this photograph was. We also educated Devin on it, and he was rather fascinated by it. He found it as very compelling evidence. Today,
I think that was the one thing that he was like, what is that?
Yeah.
You know what I
sure.
mean? That and the Sierra sounds were like
Yeah.
the two big things that he was like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So today we are talking about the Beast of Seven Chutes, which is easily one of Jaster's most favorite topics when it comes to squatching. It refers, of course, to the infamous Canadian photograph that was taken in I think it was the late 2000s, I want to say.
Yes, 2005
Yeah, okay.
is what we
So,
not
perfectly in the middle of the 2000s, of a extremely tall individual in a not a national park, a regional park up in Quebec. So,
kind of same difference. So, like, the interesting thing to get into tonight before we get too far down the chute here is that trying to do research for this episode and it being in Canada was a little tricky compared to researching in the United States. Now, if you guys listen to the Lore Lodge, you will hear this kind of thing brought up whenever they discuss things concerning the Rocky Mounted Police Force. That, again, apparently, the Canadian government just has information that they just don't display in their government archives the same way that we do. And it even translates to the forestry department. So, like, whenever I went to go see, hey, how many square miles is Park to Seven Chutes, right? Mm-hmm. Not easy to find out. Not an easy thing. You know, like,
yeah, you can't just FOIA it like we can
You
here.
can't FOIA it. Like, it's not something that they have easily plastered. Because, like, I'm pretty sure somewhere either at a DNR website or Wikipedia, you can easily Google search how big a park is in the United States.
Yeah.
And it's not so simple over there. So, like, they don't even really discuss what kind of wildlife is in certain parks. They more do it by region. And we'll get into that. So, to kind of break it down, we're coming to you live from the St. Lawrence River. Like Kaz said, we're finally getting the boat back in things like water.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
After a couple of weeks of us dragging it around the country.
It was great.
I
It
know
was great.
Jaster's happy because we're not hauling it around anymore.
By the time we get back to Devon, we're going to be shredded, dude.
Absolutely.
It's going to be great. So, while I'm drinking this strawberry White Claw, let me go ahead and break some stuff down for you for the geography side of things, okay? So, this photo takes place in Quebec, we believe around mid-2005, and it takes place in the Parc de Seven Chutes, or the Park of Seven Falls, if translated in English, which is in the southern region of Quebec. All right, so it's actually smack dab in the middle of a couple of larger metropolitan areas, which is another thing that's kind of different about this whole situation here. So it's actually close to Montreal. All right, it's north of Montreal, and it is northwest of Trois-Rivières. I think my French is rusty. Okay, I have a degree in culinary arts. That's basically a minor in French for all intents and purposes, but like I'm not good at it. I ain't gonna lie. Not good at languages that don't pronounce half of the things they write on the paper, if you know what I mean. Gets confusing for a man like me.
Here, do you want me to have a go at it, Jaster?
All right, yes. Let me share the screen right quick. So,
I've got everything pulled up on my screen.
all right. So you see the
Because we're looking at our basic document we start off on every episode, right?
Yes. Let me see if I put it there real quick.
The Parc Regional des Seven Chutes in the municipality of Saint-Zénon and the Matawini Regional County Municipality in the administrative region of Landonais in Quebec in Canada, north of Montreal. The highest
Nice.
Point, yeah. I did do a little bit of French in high school. Not a lot, but a little.
Dude, I spent 2 years studying French words, and I can't tell you shit. But I can speak Spanish all right. It's weird how that works working in kitchens, you know?
So the highest point of the park is Mount Brassard, which at its summit is 2,149 feet. Or if you don't use freedom units, that is 655 meters. It has 6 marked trails for hiking, multiple campgrounds, and multiple campgrounds, yeah. It is not too far to the south of it is Montreal. The geographic region the park sits in is basically a string of cities centered on the river with large swaths of protective forests to the northwest.
Right. So, like, what's also kind of weird about this situation is, like, trying to find this place on a map is kind of odd if you're not just straight up Google searching for it. Because there's, like, 12 regional parks in this area, and they're all of varying sizes, too. You know what I mean? So, like, you can't really just start scrolling in on a random spot, you know what I mean? You'll miss it trying to find it that way.
In the United States, we would have just conglomerated all these parks into one national park. That and called it like the St. Lawrence River National Park or something, you know?
Right. Well, I think because it's like governed by a municipality and not by the federal government. Yeah. Which I believe there are certain parks that are. I'm not that educated on that. Which that would be fun. That'd be a fun afternoon to figure out the freaking law around.
The Canadian municipal law.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Love it.
Never a dull moment here at the office.
This park, however, it's kind of hard to pin down a list exactly of what kind of wildlife you might find.
Mainly because of the aforementioned issue where their manner of documenting everything is a bit weird, and they're not as forthcoming about information as we would be. And this is not to say, oh, the Canadians are hiding secrets from us. They just have a very different way of doing things.
Yep. The British Crown has left a lot of different, perspectives of governance on its children that it's left along the way. We were the rowdy kids, like, fuck you, Mom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's kind of just how it was.
Yeah.
So, like, let's get into the wildlife a little bit. So, Quebec itself, which is how I had to break this down. I had to, like, do it the long-legged route. Is quite a large territory. It's, like, not too far off, like, from being one of the largest of all of its, like, cousins, provinces, or whatever. And because of that, it has a wide list of wildlife that it has. Because of just how far north it stretches, you get polar bears all the way down to sea otters, groundhogs,
and white-tailed deer,
snapping turtles, white-tailed deer.
Yeah, that's a very big variety for sure, and that's a lot of animals to sort through when you're looking for a suspect of misidentification.
Exactly. So, like, the closest thing that you can get to a misidentified Bigfoot in this area, and I'm not entirely sure if this is even confirmed, is a cinnamon bear, because as most bear populations across the North American hemisphere, it's a very contested subject amongst the government where the bear exactly is or is not. Like, you'll always hear crap like that, especially back home. All right, we saw bear all the time. Okay, there were multiple hunts that I was on, turkey hunting and deer hunting, where we're out 4:30, 5 in the morning. You know what I mean? Getting snuck in there, getting all hit up, ready to go. And as the sun's breaking, Kaz, I see this big black mass, which is like 5 foot tall, walking like a raccoon across the tree line.
Yeah.
That's a bear.
That's a bear, yeah.
That's absolutely a bear. Okay, so like that's another part about the misidentification of like Sasquatch and bear, is that like a country boy that from Indiana that shouldn't know what a bear even is can easily see one in like 3 minutes and be like, oh, that's a bear. Okay.
Do we have any information about the average size of the cinnamon bear?
Actually, I have a link. So.
Aha! Why don't you read it off?
Let's see here. Show more. Appearance. It's not telling me shit on the federal website. Wouldn't you look at that? So, I do know cinnamon bears are more comparable in size to black bears. They are not... They're actually a black bear subspecies. They're mostly just different looking and have a different temperament. However, these things are omnivorous just the same as black bears are, eat mostly the same things, live in mostly the same latitudes. You know what I mean? Now, what's kind of cool, I think, is that like the cubs of a cinnamon bear are like this really auburn color, which like you wouldn't think would help you too well in the camouflage department. You know what I'm saying? So, the other part of this is that there is a chance that people see upright cinnamon bears and misidentify them in this area, but we'll get into why this isn't the case with this particular photo. Now,
I mean, there is definitely something to be said about, you know, misid'd bears, in Bigfoot. There's definitely a portion of like sightings that are undoubtedly misid'd bears. I would say probably, if we were to look, I'm spitballing a number here. I don't have anything to base this off of. This is just based off of my experience reading through stories, people following up on them, stuff like that. I'd say probably about, let's say out of every 100 Squatch sightings, I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15 to 20 of them are misid'd bears.
Definitely. Because, like especially if they're standing straight up and just kind of swaying.
Do you feel like that's a pretty accurate ratio, Jaster?
I would say, like, as long as it's not moving, because, like, I don't know people are smoking.
As soon as a bear starts trying to move on its hind legs, that immediately takes Sasquatch out of the equation, because it is a very clumsy gait. Because their center of mass, that's not their center of mass. That's not what they're evolved for. They are capable of doing this mainly so they can reach something higher. It is not for locomotion.
No.
So
it's obvious
when you see a bear on its hind legs, it's a very comical sight when they start walking, and it's very obvious that it's a bear. If it was just standing still, and let's say it was raking a tree or something like that, then yes, I could understand a misid'd. But like, there are some other factors that go into stuff like this. Obviously, you have people who aren't in the woods that often. Just seeing something that big like that can obviously make people panic, and when you panic, you don't always think straight, and your logic and reason isn't always sound. But
what I also think's very, very apparent whenever I talk to people that haven't seen bears before that whenever they see a brown bear for the first time, it just completely blows their mind, the sheer mass of these animals.
Oh, absolutely. Brown bears are fucking big, and I think people really vastly underestimate their size.
They can get up to a ton.
Their size and their strength, for sure.
And, like, if you see a big old brown bear, right? Like, you see, like, a 1-ton black bear kind of quartering away from you in the brushery, and all you can really see is its shoulders moving around, you know what I mean? And, like, this thing's big, it's built, you know what I'm saying? I could see that, too. Because you would think to yourself, there's no way that's a bear. You know, like, I thought bears were kind of like, you know, grizzly bear sized at best, and you're like, no, those are like small cousins.
Yeah, black
of like the king breed out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but with all of that said, we have reason to believe that the Beast of Seven Chutes is not in fact a mis-ID, and I think it's time we start looking at the photograph and really getting into the meat and potatoes of why we think this is it's a forest giant, right? Not a
bear. Not anything else.
It's not a bear, but I'm trying to think of like other Bigfoot variants, like the really aggressive kind that are like down here in the south.
No. So let's kind of start with the photo, the story of the photo.
Yeah.
I think that would probably be the best way of going about it. So, like, this thing surfaced on the internet in 2005, around July, I think. Maybe later than that, maybe earlier than that, but it's in that area. So, this was posted online, and apparently the story goes that a trucker that was going through the park was taking photos of the actual falls, right? Because the seven falls aren't like continuous in the fact that they're like within 200 yards of each other. No, they're like within miles, right? And because of that, he's sitting here taking tourist photos, basically. You know what I mean? And when he's going back through his photos, he realizes he takes a photo of this thing. Okay, and I'll put the photo up here. Now, he looks at this and he's like, holy Jesus. Turns around and he goes back, okay? Sometime later, after he posts it online and people ask him to go and, hey, can you do anything extra about this? So he goes back with a buddy. And they got a video camera, and they're trying to recreate the photo that they had seen. And a couple of weeks went by, so the foliage is a little different because things do grow that fast. But they were able to recreate it the best they could. And the man was like 6 foot-ish tall. And in the same position this thing was, the thing that it has in its arm was about where the dude's ball cap was. This makes this thing probably in the 8 to 9 foot range. Compared. And the dude was looking a whole lot smaller.
Yeah.
In the same spot. It was ridiculous. And like when the other guy, who was apparently shorter than him, traded spots to try to recreate the position and all that, you could only really see the dude's head through the foliage.
Which gets across the idea that, damn, this thing was fucking huge. And let's talk about the photo itself. Primarily, there's 2 points of, actually really 3 points of interest. Obviously, there's the height, which we just talked about, and we're probably going to continue talking about. There's its face, and more importantly, what it has.
All 3 very disconcerting when you start to look into it. Okay.
Let's see here. So, all right. So I was trying to remember the name, and thankfully the post you pulled up reminded me of. But Jaster and I believe that the entity in this photograph, is a Gugwe, or a Gugwe, however you want to pronounce it, which are the more baboon-faced, much more primal ferocious and meaner and territorial cousins of the Bigfoot, who these guys seem to really trend in in terms of territory, like extremely to the north or extremely to the south. Have you ever noticed that?
Right. They tend to not fuck with dogman territory. You notice that?
Well, that's just a Squatch thing in general, but I mean, like, I've heard like Gugwe accounts from like the Northeast, and obviously there's a lot of Gugwe accounts from down here in the South, especially around Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas. Occasionally you'll hear one out of Alabama, but that's like really in the southwestern corner, getting closer to Mississippi. But
it tends to be these really heavily rural areas.
But like you never hear about them from like anywhere in the Midwest. You don't hear about them on the West Coast. Anything like that.
No, they're definitely, I would say, more an eastern seaboard oriented subspecies. They're also known as the Type 3 Bigfoot, if you've looked into that whole thing.
I think Gugwe is just better than Type 3 because Type 3, I mean, if you're not inside baseball and you look at these terms on paper, neither of them mean anything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I feel like Gugwe is a bit more descriptive because I think that has like a native root word, if
I believe so. I keep seeing that it means face eater in the native tongue. I do not know if that's exactly true.
From?
Not off the top of my head.
How about
however,
this? I'm going to mute my mic really quickly because this mic is a lot more sensitive to keyboard clacking.
All right.
And I will
go ahead and
I'll do a quick language look, and you kind of harp a bit more on the details of this photograph.
Yes. So actually, I'll kind of go into another side point while we got some time. So we believe, like, I kind of have a hunch. I kind of believe with Bob Gimlin on this one that this thing is kind of also what northern native tribes called the Genosqua, okay, or the stone giants. Now, because of that, that does kind of throw a little wrench into what people think the Genosqua is as well, because there's a lot of people in the Sasquatch camp that kind of believe it's more of a traditional thing. Other people kind of feel like it's more of a mountain giant kind of thing. However, the thing that is true of all accounts are these are not things that you want to mess with, right? Even with you and your buddies all armed, these are not things to take lightly, because of how hyper aggressive they tend to be. And like I said, the Native Americans apparently thought face eater was the best thing to call these things. All right, not a great idea. So this being important to this whole conversation is that this is the photo of a Gugwe that we kind of really can see. All right, now the baboon snout is something that has been very well documented amongst Gugwe sightings, so that's where I'm mostly getting it from. Like, there's a lot of people that try to attribute this to the Dogman, and I don't really see it.
All right, I did my research, and I'm jumping in, and I also do not believe this is a Dogman. I know
he's a Dogman guy.
Yeah,
he's the Dogman guy.
I am the local Dogman guy on the podcast, and I'm saying this right now. I don't think this is a Dogman, and I am saying this when we keep in mind pretty much every well-known Dogman photograph. I'm putting air quotes around these have all been proven to be hoaxes. So Jaster, I did a really brief look, and I had to actually also learn how to pronounce this. So the name Gugwe is thought to come from the Kwakuti, who are a indigenous people from the Pacific Northwest, particularly Vancouver Island and adjacent mainland British Columbia. And the name Gugwe is said to mean wild man or hairy one, which, surprise, surprise, that's what most Squatch name root words are. I don't know where face eater came from, but I will tell you this: face eater is definitely more apt for Gugwe in terms of their disposition.
And they also tend to be solitary. I think that's a interesting thing to note.
That's the big difference between them and what we know about your traditional Squatch is that Gugwe they are loners. They do not live in family groups or pods or whatever you want to call them. I don't think there is an established terminology. That's one of the problems with Bigfooting is that there's a lot of things that are still disputed in terms of terminology, even though we have a lot of common, agreed-upon points of knowledge because of the wealth of, okay, well, we see this happen in areas where there's activity. So, there you go. Gugwe comes from, it had to be a indigenous origin, right? Like,
right.
That is not a white man name.
No. Like, we would call that baboon thing, you know what I'm saying?
We would call that ape face or something like that. At least down here we would. So,
right.
For Pete's sake, one of the most prominent and famous cryptids native to my state is the Alabama white thing, with an A.
I love it.
So,
and he's a Bigfoot.
Probably. That's its own can of worms.
We might have to get into that sometime.
I will get a presentation for that together at some point.
I would love it. So, back to our photograph here. This man is in a place that I believe here is on the northern side of the park, on a stretch of Highway 131. Okay? Now, why is this important? Okay? Because trying to find the supposed area that this sighting took place in kind of tested me a little bit, okay? Because, like, there's only one real highway going through this park, okay? There's not really many side roads that aren't paths or places to go camp or pull-offs or anything. This is really just a stretch of highway cutting this park in half, okay? Now, I believe we are looking at a part of the park on the northern side that kind of stretches northwest a good ways. However, let's see here. I believe it took place more than likely south of La Glacière and north of the main pull-off area, okay? Mostly due to the fact that the river itself only really runs in between, let's see here, let me get my names right, Lake Bochet and Lake Guy, okay? That's kind of the route that this thing takes, and there's only really one area that has a place where this highway grabs next to the river, and you can kind of see a pull-off point where the river kind of starts to curve towards the highway, and it's actually near the first part of the highway on the northern side. So if you were a tourist and you're sitting here taking photos, this would be either one of the last places you would take photographs, and probably one of the more important ones to you to take, or one of the first, which would also be an important one to take because you didn't want to miss it, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I believe it took place less than a mile away from private residences. Now, why is that important in any way? Because one of the two main arguments about this photograph is it carrying a deer or is it carrying a dog? And there have been local reports on the internet where they said that there were missing dogs in the area beforehand, and I kind of am on the fence. I was on the fence on this for a while because, like, this is such a large animal. It could easily be a deer, you know what I mean? Especially if it's a yearling fawn, you know what I'm saying? We can't really see much of what's going on underneath its arm, right? with all of the information present, and like I said, where I think this takes place, I am more of the opinion that this was somebody's dog. Okay? Now, let me also, Kaz, pick up this part for you. I want to make sure I've got everything, and I've got some photos that I want to bring up for you.
And look, okay, all right, let me do that. Okay, all right, I'm looking at your screen sharing now.
Let me go ahead and change the sourcing so you can see everything, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Now, this is the part of the park that I think my thoughts are this takes place at, okay?
Okay.
On the left-hand side, like I said, this is the demonstration where the river takes the most abrupt turn towards the highway.
Mm-hmm.
An important thing to note when I'm going through Street View and I'm looking at all this kind of stuff, the foliage is completely different.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's been...
Because it's 20 years
It's been 20
ago.
years since this photograph has been taken, and obviously a lot has grown since then.
So I had to rely on the highway and the river in order to make my educated guess. Okay? Now, the part about this, like I said, that is important is, Kaz, what's on the northern side of this photograph?
That's like a tourist center or a rest area or something, isn't it?
That's a house.
Oh, that's a house. Oh, that's a property.
That's a property.
Okay.
Okay? So, if people's dogs have been going missing, which is also something that happens a lot in Bigfoot activity.
Well, particularly in Gugwe areas.
They don't like dogs.
Gugwe are more likely to take dogs than your average, like, traditional Squatch are. I mean, Squatch in general don't like dogs, but, like, traditional Squatch will, like, throw rocks at them or, like, you know, slap a tree and like, scare a dog off, right?
Or intimidate.
Yeah. Gugwe in particular, if you have missing dogs, that's probably a sure sign you have a Gugwe, because we've read quite a few areas that have had Gugwe activity. What was the name of that group that was based out of Louisiana that we really liked, that one season show they had?
Oh, damn, Kaz. You keep forgetting them, dude. It's the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization, bro.
We love Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Org, and those guys have a lot of experience with Gugwe, in particular, because they treat them as problem animals.
For good reason.
For good reason, yes, because they are... You know, if you have Squatches on your property, there's a chance you could, for the most part, ignore them, and just kind of get into this weird coexistence with them. I'm not talking in the fluty kind of coexistence where we're leaving fruit out and we're all, you know, holding hands and singing by the fire, but, you know, it's the same way that you would exist with a large predator in your area, which is to say you leave them alone and they leave you alone. Gugwe are something you kind of want help with, because they can... I mean, there is a threat to your family if they get too agitated with you. So, and there were quite a few cases where one of the first signs that there was a Gugwe in the area was that a dog went missing or livestock went missing. So,
I would also think that I agree mostly with the logic behind their mission, that the whole idea of what they do, okay, to kind of explain it for people that haven't watched the show, is that they go out there with a fire team. And, like, this ain't a bunch of rednecks running around in the woods, okay? These are Army veterans, professional hunters, ex-policemen, trained shooters, that they have to pass their own, at that point, separate marksmanship course and safety courses. They set up their hunts with distinct sight lines and flag zones where shooters will not take a shot in a certain direction because of the unfortunate happening of somebody accidentally getting shot.
Yeah.
They take their safety very seriously, and the person who runs this organization is a Vietnam veteran himself.
Yeah, so... If you're
So these guys have some
yeah,
chops.
yeah. Their website has not been updated in a while, but that's kind of par for the course when it comes to Bigfoot groups.
Right.
The
However, I
tech side has
will.
never really been super big. Now that said, if you're wondering what show it is, if you have Discovery Plus, it's called Bigfoot is Real, and it's one of me and Jaster's favorite Bigfoot shows of all time.
Oh, definitely.
The way these guys carry themselves is really different from a lot of other Bigfoot investigation shows, stuff like that. And I think when it comes to field research and definitely pro shooting camp, these guys are legit. And if I would love to go, I would love to to talk with one of these guys one day. So yeah.
Oh, I agree.
So anyways,
these guys would be an awesome guest on the show. If anybody knows those guys, that'd be awesome.
Oh man,
you know what I'm saying?
Imagine if we could get these guys on.
So I've got a zoomed out photo a little bit for you, Kaz,
Yes.
so you can kind of get a little better idea
better
of the general
context
locale
of
here.
the geography of the area, yeah, and
They're in the middle of nowhere.
yeah,
Like, this is like 40-mile stretch right here. Okay? There ain't nothing, okay,
Lots
between
of-
these towns.
yeah, it is lots of really dense forests with these tiny roads cutting through them, and there's all these lakes and rivers and tributaries around. And at least from what I see, I can't really get a good topographical perspective of this, but this looks like a pretty steep area. I see lots.
It is.
Because I am seeing clusters of trees at higher elevations than some of these other forests. So
Well, these geographic features is what allows the Park of Seven Chutes to exist in the first place as far as a water feature.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, like, see Lake Anawa right next to my arrow there on the left?
yeah,
That's what,
yeah,
like, feeds into Lake Guy.
right.
And, like, that's what causes that river. And, like, that was actually one of the harder things for me to find, was finding a spot where the river actually meets the highway, because establishing which river it even was kind of weird. And what a river was with this topographical map to even get my street view in the right area to start looking even at even an ounce better
Yeah,
was kind of hard. So, like I said, there's plenty of water around here. There's plenty of wildlife around here. There's plenty of things for a large animal to have in order to survive.
absolutely. This is hog heaven for a big
100%.
Like if we were talking about ratings, this would be a 5-star Bigfoot resort right here, baby. There's no
100%.
There's only isolated scattered properties with maybe a handful of people on them at best. Most of them are spaced out from each other, so it's easy to avoid them. There's plenty of wildlife because it's relatively undisturbed wilderness, and not to mention the abundant water sources. There are plenty of places to drink from, and get fish from and stuff like that. So, fish, game, all that stuff. This is an abundant area, and if I were a Squatch, this would absolutely be the ideal stomping grounds.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm kind of the point in this part where I'm wondering to myself, okay, I kind of want to bring this up, and I know this might get us some beef from the Dogman community, and that's not the point here, okay? I don't want no beef, but I don't see this as a Dogman, all right?
No.
The biggest thing
again,
I don't see
as the-
is ears.
As the Dogman guy, I agree. I don't believe this is a Dogman.
Like, get into it, Kaz. I want to hear your opinion here.
Okay, so the thing about the reason why everybody brings up that this may potentially be a Dogman is because of the snout on it. That's kind of the smoking gun for a lot of people. Is, oh, well, this has a snout, it might be a Dogman. But the thing is, it's a very distinct snout in the photograph, and the problem with it is that it's way too short and because like dogmen have dog snouts, and those are long and those protrude. And even if you look at the angle of this photograph, it's too short. It's like a snub. It's very snubby to really be able. And to be a wolf-like, canine-like nose. And I know this is a lot of conjecture going off of a blurry zoomed-in section of a photograph from 20 years ago. So obviously I can't make any absolute claims that no, this isn't a dogman. But one of the other reasons I really believe this isn't a dogman is we have the telltale conical head shape of a squatch. Now, Gugwes are built a little bit differently, but for the most part, from what I remember reading in reports and such, their heads are pretty much the same in terms of shape. Though they have thicker necks than squatches do, which is saying something. Squatches have pretty thick necks.
Oh, dude. What I also would point out, if it makes it sound any easier for people to understand, is that, like, if you took what a squatch would look like if it was a baboon instead of a gorilla.
Yeah, that's the main defining feature of a Gugwe, is they have a more baboon-like face rather than the more gorilla-esque man-like face of a Sasquatch, and that's what really sets them apart from their, more famous cousins. Also, would you agree with me that there's a prominent brow ridge of some kind on this entity?
I would say so. I would definitely say so. You could also see where the eyes are definitely shaded within its brow line. So the next part of this I want to kind of get into is that there's not a whole lot of places yet that have the full breakdown.
No.
The full story.
No.
Okay, up behind this photo.
No.
Now, the part that I'm about to read you, this you kind of gotta get just the trust that this guy is who he says he is a little bit. Okay, enough people have taken to this that they believe this is true. As far as I see, not a whole lot of proof that this guy is who he says he is, but what he's saying would shed a little light if this is true. So, the photo came out mid-2005. Apparently, the photo, according to this man, was taken in June of 2005. Okay? So, this man, trying to research the subject, okay, he goes online and he sees that the person that has taken this photo is selling recreations of this photo for $20 a pop on eBay, I believe it was. And the guy, in order to get the conversation started with this man, buys a photo. And when he buys it, he explains the situation, who he is and everything, and he asks, hey, so in order to keep the credibility of this intact, if this really happened the way you said this happened, don't sell this, okay? Makes everybody look bad, right? And I brought this up before. Thing is with Bigfoot stuff is that people try to make money off of Bigfoot things, and, I understand it, okay? But, if you have legit evidence that this thing might be real, please don't try and sell it, because it belittles the entire conversation for anybody trying to prove the thing instead of make money off of it. So, this guy agrees to stop selling it. He takes it down, all this other kind of stuff. So, the guy continues on to ask him more questions like, hey, I'm a researcher, and I'm trying to find out more about what's going on here. And the guy elaborates, apparently he's a dump truck driver for a construction company. And he's familiar with eBay, and the reason why he was on there is because he sold computer parts on it occasionally, and he was out with a new camera taking photos on his day off when he had taken 100 or so more and some video footage, and he was selling it on eBay just to make some extra money. Apparently Lauren Coleman had purchased the photograph off of this man. If true, big if true, you know what I mean?
Big if true, because that's probably the best hands for it to be in.
I know. Sorry, I had to take a drink. So, he confirmed the photo with the others. He established the location of the area being Park of Seven Chutes. Okay? So, kind of fast forwarding a little bit. This guy, his name was apparently Larry. Not entirely sure was the name of this truck driver. And this guy believes what he'd seen was what he says it was. A Bigfoot type creature. Okay? That's why he's trying to sell it on eBay. You know what I'm saying? You know, he's definitely going like real Bigfoot photo, all capital letters, you know what I'm saying? Like some Temu type shit. And like, while the photo itself was being sold, whenever the original got released to the person, the photo itself had no indication of digital tampering or anything of the sort. Like, this was not a Photoshop. Anything about it that might have keyed a digital expert to thinking that this was fake. No red flags. Okay? And like you said before, the man tried to go back and make a video recreating the entire event. Okay? And like I said, big different result versus what he had gotten a photo of it originally. Okay? So, the guy that had seen this creature, apparently, locally, there was another dogman encounter that had happened called the Steven Kruger incident. Like, kind of close to it. I don't know if you're familiar with that incident
I
at all.
am actually, mainly because that's the name of one of my uncles, and I don't know if this was actually my uncle who saw it, but that's still a little weird nonetheless.
So, like, apparently, this guy was listening to this other guy's report, and the guy was like, okay, well, that was strange, alright? Did sound a little different than what mine sounded like, okay? Little similar, but a little different. Not entirely convinced it was the same thing. So, like, apparently, according to this man, the guy who taken the photograph didn't really feel Dogman was in there either, okay? So, now that we kind of got all of the stuff together, okay, we have the truck driver that was driving down the road, going through this national park on his day off, snapping some photographs, got him one of these things, okay? He had somehow managed to make a photograph of one of the more elusive kinds of creature in this subspecies category of Bigfoot to ever exist on his day off, not even trying. You know what I mean? And he's sitting there to himself, man, well, shit, I might as well make some money on this, you know what I'm saying? So, like, he starts selling it on eBay. And that's when people start catching onto what's going on. Apparently, Lauren Coleman bought a photograph. And apparently, this guy comes up here and starts a conversation with him, convinces him to stop selling this photograph. Okay? Now, what's interesting about all of the conversations about this thing is that the original person who had taken the photograph has no weighing in of what he thinks the thing was carrying, but many people think either it's a deer or a dog. And like, because of how we've looked at it tonight, I am more of the opinion that it was a dog because of rumored alleged reports of missing animals in the area for at least a month or two before this photo was taken, and the fact that there was a private residence just north of this area, and it was the only private residence in the foreseeable area, half hour north or south. There's not really a whole lot of private residences in the entire area, okay? If there was a dog there, and that dog was loud, and that dog was keen on keeping its yard, I can see it making something like it mad enough to do something about it. So, like, I'm of the opinion it's a dog. That sucks, okay? But that's my opinion. I would hate for any of that to happen, okay? Like growing up on a farm, we lost animals all the time. And, like, thankfully didn't lose my dog to Bigfoot. Okay, that would be traumatizing as shit, let's be real. I'd lost a chicken to Bigfoot, and that was freaking weird as shit to me anyway, okay?
Yeah.
And I was like 15, 16 years old. I'd seen plenty of that happen before. Like, seen plenty of stuff go, you know what I mean? But that was freaking weird, okay? So, this guy ends up starting this conversation about this photo taken in 2005 and just how much it's contributed to the entire Bigfoot conversation, yet how little actual information was present in the same space. There were a lot of people discussing the situation, but not a lot of people corroborating and bringing it all together. Okay? And that's what hope that we've gotten going on tonight, that we've covered as much as we can about this photograph in order to get people to understand the full idea of what happened that fateful day. And is it real? Is it fake? That's up to you to decide. But like we had said before, this is a very compelling photograph in the discussion about Bigfoot. And this is one that has definitely taken the cake as far as photographs that are definitive in what they portray to have seen. And people can't debunk it. That's the interesting thing about Bigfoot, isn't it? We are having a hard time proving it, but they're having a hard time debunking it. So, with that, if you guys have any comments, questions, anything like that, if you have your own encounters, or if you want to actually talk to us on the show about your encounter, that would be awesome. We'd like to hear from you guys. We'd like to set something up. We'd like to have an interview with some Bigfoot people. You know what I mean? That would be cool. Let's get that kind of stuff going, don't you think, Kaz?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to start having guests on for interviews at some point, and I hope we'd be able to reach that point someday.
Yeah, so if you know somebody,
even if it does kind of homogenize our podcast a little bit, because there's a bajillion other shows that talk to people about their encounters and stuff, but it'd still be cool to get into that. But honestly, I'm also just fine maintaining our present course. So,
well, I kind of want to also just kind of bring it into the conversation the way we deal with it. You know what I mean? Like, I do like the fact that we're trying to bring more to the conversation, and we're trying to bring the conversation together on a topic a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, if we can get somebody on there that's got something good, can prove that something weird happened, absolutely. Who are we to turn them down? You know what I mean? So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been our episode of KOR Live, After Hours, Park of Seven Chutes. We hope y'all have enjoyed yourself. We even definitely enjoyed ourselves. You know how that goes. Like, that kind of happens. You know what I mean? I definitely got into it this episode. Been drinking a little bit. Been having a wild day. You know how it goes. Mm-hmm. So, with that, we'd like to thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if y'all got to the end. Leave a comment about your discussions about Bigfoot. Let's all talk about it down below. Y'all have a wonderful night, and we'll see y'all next time.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.